We have our audience starting to join us here. Thanks, everybody. I'm giving everyone just a second to go ahead and connect to audio before I start going. As you're logging in tonight, your cameras and your microphones have been set to remain off. So if you could keep them off, that would be great. Thanks so much. It just makes the event run a little smoother. I see a few of you are still connecting. I'm just going to give you guys a second. All right, and then I'll start my spiel. And those of you who've been through a few of these events are probably tired of my face and my spiel, but I'll try to make it quick. Welcome, everybody. My name is Carrie. I'm from the Andersons events team. Before we get started, I just wanted to take a second to welcome you, of course, to our event with Jessamyn Stanley and to thank you all for being here tonight. The Andersons family has been selling books independently since 1875. So we have made it through a few things in the past, including the last pandemic. And we're going to make it through this too, of course, but it is a really difficult time and we've never encountered anything quite like this. So we just wanted to let you know that your support of this event by attending tonight and your purchase of the book through us allows us to remain in business. So we are truly grateful to you guys for your support of these events. A couple of things about tonight before we get started. As mentioned previously, your cameras and microphones are off for the duration of the event because it cuts down on distraction and also on that dreaded Zoom lag, which makes Zoom kind of just run a lot like sketchier. So this way it runs a lot smoother if we do that. So please keep them off. If you'd like to ask questions though, we are going to have a fun Q&A at the end. All you have to do is just go ahead and put your questions through the chat function here at the bottom of your screen on Zoom. I will be collecting those questions and then I'll come back on at the end after Jessamyn is done speaking and I will feed your questions to her. And for some reason in this virtual format, everybody seems to be a lot more shy than they are in person. So all I'm going to say is please submit questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question. And please submit them at any time during the event because the more that you guys ask questions, the more interactive the event is for you and for the author. And it's just a lot more fun for everybody. So don't be shy about that. Let's see. Oh, one more thing. If you ordered a book for tonight, please know that you'll receive an email when your books are either ready to pick up or have shipped to you, depending on which option that you chose. And I just want to give you the heads up that can sometimes take us a day or two because we're actual human beings that process our orders and we have to get through all the orders at once. So sometimes that does take a day or two, but we will contact you and let you know when it's ready. If you have not ordered your book for tonight or you'd like another signed copy because all copies ordered tonight will be signed, I'll be putting info on how you can do that in the chat with a link that you can click to. And just a reminder, signed books make amazing gifts. And it's never too early to start planning, of course, for those holidays right around the corner. Our signed books always sell out every year by like November. So just be getting them as you go along. That's my best advice because, of course, signed books never cost more at Andersons and they do make very thoughtful gifts, I think. So I'll have a link for that for you. Other than that, I think we're ready to get to the good stuff that we all came here tonight for. Of course, we're here tonight with Jessamyn Stanley, who is the author of Everybody Yoga and Yoke, her new one, Yoke, and an internationally acclaimed voice in wellness, highly sought after for her insights on 21st century yoga and intersectional identity. She is the founder of The Underbelly, an inclusive wellness community and streaming app, co-host of the podcast Dear Jessamyn, and co-founder of We Go High, a North Carolina-based cannabis justice initiative. She is a regular contributor to Self Magazine and has been featured in the New York Times, Vogue, and Sports Illustrated. And we are so lucky to have her here tonight. Welcome, Jessamyn.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And I'm really honored to be back here with Andersons, like back here virtually. I'm joining y'all from Durham, North Carolina. And whenever we talk about yoga, it is always, I think, focused upon postural practice and focused on physically moving the body and working up maybe a sweat, maybe like creating relaxation in the body. But ultimately, every posture, every way of practicing is just an opportunity to breathe. It's literally all about breathing. Like you don't even need to do anything more than breathe in and out to practice yoga. So to that end, let's start by taking a breath together.
I'm going to pop out. I'm going to turn off my camera to get the focus on you and the breathing exercise, but I'm right here if you need me. I'll see you at the end.
Oh. So I'm gonna move some of these things out from behind me to get really comfortable. And you don't need to change positions. You don't need to sit on the ground. You don't need to find a special, you don't need to do anything different than what you are currently doing. If your feet are on the ground, you can let your feet really rest into the ground. And I'm actually gonna take off my shoes so that I can really feel my feet plug into the earth. And when you're ready, just let your eyes drift closed. Extend up through the crown of your head. Relax your shoulders down your back. And more than anything, just give yourself permission to be here. You don't need to do anything else. You don't need to be anywhere else. All you need to do is just let yourself be here now. And that's every part of yourself. There may be a part of you that is focused on something that happened yesterday. There might be a part of you that's thinking about later today or tomorrow. Bring all those parts here to this moment right now. Your breath will get deeper or more shallow. That's okay. For now, don't worry about maintaining any specific cadence. Know that no matter what, your breath follows the cadence of your spirit. No matter where you go, no matter what you do, the breath will lead you. Where it goes, you go, and when it stops, you stop. It might come in through your nose, out through your nose. It might come in through your mouth, out through your mouth. It might be in through your nose, out through your mouth, or vice versa. Right now, it really doesn't matter the details of it. Just let yourself sink into the rhythm of yourself and give up to this breath. And then when you're ready, and it feels like it's time, And just blink your eyes open. Now, at this stage in my career, for the most part, people come to me to learn yoga, which for most people means wanting to learn yoga postures. And yeah, postures are great. They help you connect with your body, and they help you link your body and your breath so that your mind can be still for meditation. But really, you don't need to practice a bunch of different postures to connect your breath with your body. You really only need one. And the posture doesn't need to be any more complicated than the posture that we practiced a little while ago. It's a posture that anyone can practice, regardless of age or ability or lifestyle or literally any of the other things that we think make us different from one another. So, using that same math, really everything in life is a yoga posture. Literally everything. Like every fight, every moment of doubt. And if you take that equation a little bit further, those fights and those moments of doubt, those yoga postures, they all start inside yourself. That is the jumping off point for Yoke. It's about the yoga of everyday life, the yoga of self-acceptance, the yoga of looking at all of your contradictions and sitting at the intersection of your identity. And from that place, daring to accept yourself. For me, it's meant accepting my internalized racism. It's meant accepting the ways that I slut shame myself, accepting the ways that I culturally appropriate yoga. It's meant looking at everything that I don't like about myself and deciding to move forward from that place instead of trying to pretend like all that stuff's not there. But this process isn't really what I would call fun or pretty or particularly like Instagrammable. And honestly, I really struggled with what to say in this talk that wouldn't just sound like complete bullshit. And the only thing that even really felt worth saying was just be yourself. That's it. No one else. Just be yourself. And I could say more, but really every essay in this book is just saying some version of that over and over again. And, you know, there is a lot of profanity. So if you're sensitive to that type of thing, you know, honestly, actually look into that. The profanity alone might unearth some emotions for you. And that's cool too. That's really what I mean when I say be yourself. I mean, bring all of that shit too. Be warned. I mean, I told you it's going to get heated because we're talking about racism and other uncomfortable stuff that people don't like to talk about usually. Like your panties are definitely going to get in a twist. But if we can make it over that hump, then I think it'll be okay. Because I doubt I'm saying anything you haven't already heard or thought about, or were thinking to yourself quietly and wondering if anyone else felt the same way. And I really just keep saying the same thing over and over again because it really is that simple. Every essay is an offering to just be yourself all the time, no matter what, no matter who's watching, no matter what you're wearing, no matter what they're wearing, no matter what your kid is wearing, or your husband, or your wife, or your gender nonconforming partner, or whoever. Just be yourself. No matter who sees you, not if your pastor sees you, or the aforementioned parent or kid, or any of the other people. No matter who you thought you should be, or who everybody else knows you weren't and aren't and will never be. No matter what dreams get tarnished or ruined in the process or will never come to be. No matter what, just be yourself fully the whole time, even in the in between hard to breathe moments. Just be yourself. And you don't need to do anything else ever for any reason at all. And you don't even have to read that to know it because you already know that because it's the truth. It's kind of the only truth. And it was written down inside you the whole time because no one else can do what you do and offer what you offer. There's literally no one else and will never be anyone else who can do what you do. You have to live your life for all of us. Like, if you live your life, we can all get free. But I know that when I say be yourself, you're probably like, bitch, which self? I got a bunch of selves. Which self are you talking about? And honestly, I feel you. Like, is it the self that takes care of your kids? Or is it the self that shows up at work? Is it the self that hangs out with your friends? Or is it the self that fights with your partner? I guess I think about myself as being a combination of all of those masks. It's a combination of all the masks I wear. It's a combination of all myselves. It's about everybody showing up for the party, not just the person that you've decided to be today. It's the person who says the wrong thing, the one who offends people, who stumbles, who falls, the person who is pushy and annoying and hard to handle, the self that can't fit into a box. That's yourself. That's myself. That's the one who's too broad and too fat, too vast to fit into anybody's box. And in my experience, you really only encounter that person in your most vulnerable moments, like when you're actually listening to yourself. I usually only meet that bitch when something really annoying happens, and usually only if someone else is watching. I really started meeting myself when I started taking pictures of my yoga practice. That's when I started to realize how much of a bitch I can be because of how much of a bitch I am to myself. I say really shitty, mean things about myself, and that carries into other parts of my life. It affects how I see other people and how I see the world around me. I think I really had to meet myself on the day that is ultimately Yoke's namesake. Yoke, by the way, is my ratchet American millennial definition of the word yoga. So yoke means to join together, to bring together. That's what yoga is. It's bringing together all the pieces of yourself, the light and the dark, the good and the bad, the ups and the downs. That is how I defined the word yoke in my first book, Everybody Yoga. But I ended up making a mistake on the way there that really kind of blew this whole thing wide open for me. Okay, here's what happened. All right, so this was right after Everybody Yoga came out. I was up late one night in my home office and I got a notification on Gmail. The email was from a freelance copy editor who had read Everybody Yoga, and she'd found a typo in it that she thought was a pretty big deal and that I on my next project should consider hiring her so as to avoid that type of typo. The typo in question was I had used the word yoke to join together, to bring together, but instead of spelling it like the word yoke, Y-O-K-E, I'd spelled it like the word yolk, Y-O-L-K, which means the inner part of an egg. The email literally, it was like a mic drop, man. And I was like, okay, I was so pissed because first of all, I don't know if you've ever published a book, but legit, there are so many rounds of edits and revisions. And I really just couldn't believe that we'd made it that far in the process and I had not noticed this massive edit. And my knee-jerk reaction was to wake up my editor in Brooklyn and be like, can we do like a reprint of the whole run of the book? But and then my second reaction, well, first or second, was to just like talk cash shit about this person who sent me the email. I'm like, don't you know that mistakes happen in publishing, and it's not that big of a deal. And God, I was so mad. I was so embarrassed. More than anything, I was embarrassed. And instead of continuing to like talk shit about this person and wake up my editor, I decided to roll out my yoga mat and sit down. And I wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna practice meditation now. Or I wasn't like I need to practice handstands, it'll make me feel better. I literally just sat down. And I just closed my eyes and I just started breathing. Just in and out through the nose. And one of the things, if you may have experienced this a little while ago in the breath work, when you practice breath work, when you practice meditation, it is not an instant state of calm. It is like all the thoughts in your head collide. They all come together. And I actually, as a Virgo rising, I always think of it as like the best time to just think about every single thing that I want to think about. So my meditation time is my time to obsess over whatever details I cannot let go of. And in that obsession, when you let the thoughts collide, eventually you realize that you can't think about everything forever. There are thoughts that will come in your mind, and then if you let them, you can let them go out of your mind as well. You can release hold on them. But the thoughts will still be there. And one of the thoughts that came up for me was that I wasn't mad at the person who sent me that email. I was embarrassed, but it was bigger than being embarrassed. And really, what I was feeling ultimately was my imposter syndrome. An imposter syndrome that I had felt since way before that day. I had definitely thought, what business do I have writing a book about yoga? There are people who have been practicing and teaching yoga for decades. They haven't written books. Why am I out here trying to write a book about yoga? Like I never felt as though I knew enough about it to be talking about it. I never felt like deserving of any kind of positive reinforcement or feedback. I felt like I was conning, honestly. It felt like an imposter. But what I didn't do was accept that. I didn't acknowledge that. I knew that there was imposter syndrome, but I would just pretend it wasn't there. So I don't know if maybe you've done this before. Pretend like your imposter syndrome is not there. But I really felt like that experience of actually like being forced to look at this imposter syndrome, at this really intense way of viewing myself, I was forced to accept it. And acceptance, I don't think acceptance is like saying, oh my God, I love this. It's so great. Like, I love having imposter syndrome. It's really fun. No, at least not for me anyway. Imposter syndrome is more like, or accepting it is more like, okay, this is what it is. This is who I am. Okay, that's just gotta be okay. And it's like, it smells and it's ugly to look at, and I'm not into it, but it feels so much better to accept it than to pretend it doesn't exist. And to me, that is the yoking. That is the yoga. That whole thing of being forced to see the truth of yourself, being forced to look at something that is not fun and doesn't usually receive superlatives, like gazing upon that and just accepting it, that is what yoga really is. And that is the practice in action. That's what it means to yoke. And on that note, let's actually take a moment to just take a breath together. Just reconnect with the breath. So as you're ready, take your time. Close your eyes. You can let your arms drop down and kind of shake them out a little bit. Shake your head from side to side. Unhinge your jaw. And just reconnect to that flow of breath in through your nose. And out through your nose. Relax the tops of your eyelids. Relax the very tips of your shoulders. Extend up through the crown of your head. And then as you're ready, only when it feels organic and it is time, gently blink your eyes open. So that experience was really a teacher for me. Yoga teachers really just show up. Anybody can be a teacher, literally. Like, everybody is a teacher. Everybody is teaching somebody. Trees are teachers. Your cat, your dog, incredible yoga teachers, really some of the best. Talk about telling you how to just be in the present moment and not worry about nothing, just be present. Let me tell you about something that happened with one of my teachers. It's actually not just any teacher, my favorite teacher. Okay. So this teacher, he was teaching a workshop on the foundations of yoga in, excuse me, at my home yoga studio. I call it my home yoga studio because it's where I did my yoga teacher training, Asheville Yoga Center, which is in Asheville, North Carolina. And this was maybe a little less than 6 months after Everybody Yoga came out. And my teacher, I love him so dearly. This man, literally, he is somebody who sometimes I feel like I'm just doing an imitation of how he teaches. He's really, honestly, like one of the most body positive yoga teachers I've ever had, except he's not the. I think that people think of body positivity or body acceptance, body liberation as being a fat people thing exclusively. And but this guy is like a thin, 6 footish tall white guy. I think he's actually from the Midwest. Um, he's not what I would call different on the outside. I don't know how you describe that, but he creates this environment that is so inclusive and so accepting, and he really has inspired me so deeply. And when I saw that he was teaching this workshop, I was stoked because it was about Sanskrit, it was about Hatha Yoga Pradipika, it was about like all this stuff that I love to get really nerdy about, like I said, Virgo rising. And I, oi, as soon as I saw that I could go, I blocked it out in my calendar, drove up to Asheville that weekend. And I will say that I was a little bit concerned going because um, by this point, I mean, literally Everybody Yoga had just come out, and I just, I did not want to be recognized. I felt, like I said in the beginning, I've felt a lot of imposter syndrome. I felt very uncomfortable being being seen by other people, and certainly not in my with this yoga teacher that I respect so dearly. I was like, I'm not trying to have all that. I was just trying to go and sit in the back and not be concerned. And I when I got there, I like found a quiet spot by a window, and I definitely still, I mean, I don't know if y'all noticed, the yoga world is exceedingly white. So I was definitely um, one of the only, I think I might have been the only Black person there. And I'm fat. I kind of stick out. So I don't know how well I did it hiding, but I was like, yes, I can just be over here in the corner and just do nerd out, and it's gonna be great. And it's so good. And a few we got like halfway through the weekend before I started to like really have some serious misgivings about what my teacher was saying. Um, so the class was really, it was about what I would call classical yoga, maybe some people would call ancient yoga. And my teacher was really saying that anyone who practices yoga in America especially, should feel a direct cultural connection with classical yoga, which classical yoga, excuse me, is very deeply embedded in South Asian culture. It's very, it's literally a huge part of major religions in South Asia. and that originated in South Asia. And it is something that I think for me personally brings up a lot of different feelings, because as much as yoga is about yoking and bringing together the different pieces of yourself, the light and the dark, I have found that yoga is not really about appropriating South Asian culture. In fact, I actually think that if you are really practicing your yoga, if you're really yoking, it will always bring you back to the culture inside of you. It will always bring you back to your own identity, your own culture. And so I was really concerned and upset by this idea that non-South Asian practitioners of yoga should feel a direct cultural connection to classical yoga. Because I think, I thought, I felt, I feel, I still think that that is not the case, and that ideology is really the result of imperialism and exoticization and fetishization, and the long legacy of white supremacy that dictates so much of what happens in our world. And I was like, maybe I don't understand what he's saying. Like maybe I just, because I respect this man so much. Seriously, I was like, I don't want to, I can't possibly, like, he must know something that I don't, or like, I don't know. But it was just eating away at me. Like every time that he would say something, I would just be like, what the fuck, man? What is this white man's burden shit for real? Is this really what we're doing out here? And so I was really nervous to contradict him, or nervous to ask a question even. And but this is the thing about my inner Hermione Granger. She not gonna stop. If she has an opinion, it's coming out. So um he would like periodically ask us for questions. And I waited for a moment when he was, because my question was not about anything that he was actively talking about. So I was like, let me try to sneak it in. And I raised my hand and he called on me, and I said, what I asked him what he would suggest for a practitioner who does not see themselves in the lineage of classical yoga, a practitioner who, you know, they feel as though they are an American yoga practitioner. I would call American yoga any lineage of yoga that originated in the United States, like in the late 19th, early 20th century or later. And I just wanted to know like what he would suggest, or like, am I misunderstanding? And I just remember it got so quiet in this room. And he just looked at me. I really remember the way that he looked at me more than anything. He looked at me like kind of like he'd been expecting me to have some shit to say, but also like he was very wise, very, very, very wise. And he told me in no uncertain terms that the reason that I did not feel a connection to classical yoga is because I don't know enough about yoga. And that if I knew more about it, then I would feel that connection to it. And it was legit. It was a bit of a full circle moment for me, because going back to that email from the beginning, the email that brought up my imposter syndrome, I was like, this bitch just called me out, not just in an email, but he just called me out in a room full of people. He let me know exactly what he thought. And he said exactly what I had thought other people must be thinking about me, especially practitioners who have been living this practice for a long time. And he definitely shut up Hermione. And I didn't I don't know. I guess I probably wanted to say something back, but I wasn't going to. I just looked out the window and I just started breathing. Again with the breathing, just breathing. And while I found my breath, and while I was breathing, I thought about what he said, and I thought about the truth in what he was saying. Like, I don't know enough about it. I won't. I do. I am carrying imposter syndrome. These things are all true. And then I thought about what I did know about yoga, and more specifically, what I know about American yoga and American yoga history and American history in general. I thought about the legacy of colonization and xenophobia and racism and fetishization. And more than anything, I really thought about how he had probably never thought about that at all. This is a very common thing for white people to not think about this. And I thought, I think I need to leave this class. And so I waited for the next break, and I waited for the people who had questions during the break to leave the room so that it was just me and my teacher. And I packed up all my stuff and I told him, well, really, I told the floor. I was just looking at the floor. I told him that, told the floor that I was really sorry that I needed to leave early and blah, 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 blah. And I just remember when I finally looked at him that he was just smiling again, sage, wise smile. And he said, that he was happy to see me and that he was looking forward to seeing me sometime in the future. And I walked out and I have not seen him since then. And I just really felt like it was one of the best teaching experiences of my life. This man has consistently taught me how to live this yoga, because the yoga always starts inside yourself, always. And the way that he teaches, the way that I teach, the way everybody teaches is literally just by being yourself. Just always be yourself. That is the lesson. And if you just be yourself, you are showing other people how to be themselves. And even though, really, because I agreed with my teacher, I had to accept that truth, accept my truth. And that's why I left the class. Because he and I don't have to have the same opinion or experience, and that is okay. We don't need to. That is both of our yoga. That is our yoking. Let's take a moment. Just take a quick breath here. Close your eyes. Drop your arms down. Relax the tops of your eyelids. Find that deep breath in through your nose, out through your nose, in through your mouth, out through your mouth, in through your mouth, out through your mouth, whatever you would like. And then when you're ready, gently blink your eyes open. I feel like all of you is allowed to be there. All of every single part. It's all allowed to be there. allowed to have imposter syndrome, allowed to have doubts, allowed to disagree, allowed to get it wrong, allowed to offend people. And really, like, it literally all comes back to the breath. It's about maintaining it, prioritizing it. It's always about breathing. So if you can breathe, you can do this. And I think that this acceptance of yourself, the being yourself, that is really the true activism. To be yourself, it's an act of political freedom. Like, it is a middle finger to the laws of conformity. It is a sign of ownership, and it's an invitation for other people to do the same thing. The practice can be anything that you like, because everything is yoga. Even if you don't call it yoga, it's still yoga. Yes, I do try to practice postures as frequently as I can, and I sit in meditation and I focus on breathing. But even without all of that, it's still yoga. It's still yoking. And I think you can really learn to lead. You can really learn to lead others by being yourself, by accepting yourself, and by making space for other people to do the same thing. So I feel like I've rambled quite a bit, and
Rambling is wonderful.
I'm going to, I will cede the floor.
I could listen to you all day, seriously. Like, it's just such fantasticness that comes out, like, and stuff we all need to hear, and stuff I feel like we like know, but we need almost like permission to feel it and really put it into practice. So thank you. That was great. We do have some great questions actually from the audience, some deep ones too. We got about 12 minutes here. We'll try to get through as many as we can. We can go a couple minutes over if we need to. So let's just jump right in if that's okay with you. This one's from Kathy. You sort of touched on this a little bit. She said, when did you first discover that it's all about the breath and that sun salutations make it better, as you said in your first book? Was it a journey? She's thinking it was. And who was your first yoga teacher?
Oh man, this is such a great question. Okay,
they're all this good.
Let's see. This is really good. Okay, so I did not know that yoga was all about the breath in the beginning, like not at all. And I definitely felt like I thought yoga was all about postures. And when I first started practicing yoga, I was practicing Bikram yoga. So I don't know if y'all have practiced Bikram. It is a style of hot yoga, and you practice the same 26 postures 2 times in a period of about 90 minutes. So, and it's in a room that's about 105 degrees, depending on how depending on how sadistic the teacher is. So I focused on those 26 postures. That was my yoga. I never practiced sun salutations. I didn't have any context for that. And while the breathing is a huge part of the Bikram practice, it's also something that is really difficult and really easy to write off as being like, yeah, I don't really care about that. Like, yeah, there's breathing, but whatever, who cares? I did not start to really understand that yoga was about breathing until I had been practicing for a couple of years. And it wasn't until I started to practice vinyasa style yoga, which the way that I teach yoga and the way that you can practice with me at my yoga brand, The Underbelly, is a style of vinyasa yoga. And vinyasa is, it's all about linking breath with motion. That's literally what vinyasa means. And so that if you cannot catch your breath, you should not be practicing the posture. Like, the breath will always lead the posture. So that was when I started to really have a more clear understanding of that. But my first yoga teacher, oh man, Trudy Swink, that I can think of, like that really just like fucking did it for me. Trudy Swink at Bikram Yoga, Winston-Salem. I started practicing yoga when I was in graduate school at University of North Carolina School of the Arts, which is in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And I used to go to the Bikram studio there. And Trudy was, I mean, I don't know where Trudy is right now, but that person, that's a good person. She and her husband, Bruce, own this studio. And they're just like the most accepting, warm people. Like, she would just be so warm when you would come into the class. Like, I don't even know, man. Trudy's a real one. But yeah, so Trudy Swink, and I feel like that kind of covers the actual. I can ramble about this for a while, but I feel like that covers the basis of the question. I will say that I got into sun salutations through Vinyasa style yoga. Sun salutations are a pretty big part of a traditional Vinyasa style practice, and I still feel like sun salutations are one of the best ways to just invite energy into your body. Literally this morning, I was practicing. I've been doing more of like a yin inspired practice in my personal practice. Yin style yoga is basically the opposite of yang style yoga. Vinyasa style yoga would be more of a yang style yoga, like fast paced energy. Yin style yoga is slow, and you hold postures for a long time, frequently restorative postures, not always, but frequently. And that has been the basis of my personal practice, because I find that sitting in those deep postures is just so, oh my God, it ain't nothing like it. If you practice yin style yoga, you know about it. But this morning, I've been going through it. Life has been lifing on me. I have been yoking, and I found myself in need of that vinyasa style, just connecting to my breath and moving through many postures. And I practiced 3 sun salutation A, 2 sun salutation B, and that shit felt so good. I cannot even tell you. It was like I was crying. I was crying. It was perfect. So I don't think that there's ever a point where sun salutation A is not interesting, at least not for me. And I have found that it the basics become what even more interesting over time, that you want to go back to, like mountain pose, where you stand and you're like really gripping into your feet and extending up through the crown of your head. That posture is fascinating to me, and it is essentially standing up. So like if you stand, then you practice mountain pose every day. But it's life changing. The basics are life changing. Okay, that's enough of that.
All right. Perfect answer. Thank you. Let's see. This is from Jessica. She said, what's something that was helpful in establishing a consistent yoga and meditation practice? Right?
I think the best way to practice. Okay, this is okay. I think the best thing for a yoga practice is not practicing yoga, because there's nothing that reminds you to practice like not practicing. So, but that's not really your question. You're like, how do I keep practicing every day? How do I, because so often, this is probably like certainly one of the most common things that I hear about practicing yoga is people being like, yeah, I used to practice, but I stopped practicing. Like or like you practiced for a period of time, and maybe you did like a 21-day yoga challenge or something. And then after that, day 22, you stop practicing. And then you're like, oh, I don't practice anymore. But I kind of feel like if you have started practicing at any point, then you are still practicing. Like it doesn't really matter when you pick up going to classes again, or like when you practice postures, it's all the same. And because yoga is everything, and you can practice the strengthening, the grounding, the balance, all of that in every single moment of every day, you're constantly practicing yoga. And I think that what is helpful for me, to actually answer your question, Jessica, what is helpful for me in maintaining a practice, it's to let it be that flexible, like to not beat myself up when I don't feel like practicing postures, none of that. Like if there are days where you don't feel like doing it, you don't worry about it, you don't do it. Because again, those days are the days that are actually reminding you to practice. Because there's nothing like practicing regularly and not, especially if you experience low back pain or sciatica or wrist pain or whatever shoulder sensation, whatever thing is happening in your body. The day you don't practice it and you feel that sensation again, when that sciatic nerve kicks up or your hip flexors are creaky or whatever happens, that's going to remind you to get back on the mat. So just let it be as flexible as it needs to be and be easy on yourself and get cool with like practicing. Say you're just going to practice one posture. Like if you say, I'm just going to practice cat pose, cow pose. And then once you get on your mat and you're practicing cat pose and cow pose, you'll be like, yeah, I could practice happy baby. Yeah, I could do a couple sun salutations. Before you know, you've been practicing for like 30 minutes to an hour. So just let it be easy, be flexible, and you can maintain it in the long term.
Great answer. I feel like that's true of every workout too. Like you're like, I'm just gonna do
Literally.
a half mile. I'm just gonna go once around the block. I'm just gonna, and then like once you're out there doing it, it does get you going. So
that's exactly right.
Okay, this is from Tina, and she says, this is a struggle that distracts me at the end of each class, saying namaste. What's your opinion?
Oh, yeah. Oi, man, Sanskrit is a tough one, dude, especially because technically there are different people say different things about this, but like I think saying namaste or namaskar is actually like not even traditional at the end of something. It's more traditional at the beginning. So it's kind of an awkward American thing to try to like make that not the case. But in general, let's pretend that that's not even happening. Like use of Sanskrit is dicey in general because it is, I think, appropriation to do so. But there's also this really interesting thing where like it's a sign of respect to actually know Sanskrit, to actually know the words. Because especially like when we're talking about translations, the translations of these words are not exact. And in English, we really don't have an understanding of the depths of empathy and compassion that some of these words are actually defined with. And so the translations can be off to some degree. So it is really beneficial to have a knowledge of what the original text says. But I think there's a really big difference between knowing something and feeling compelled to share it with other people. And I I do sometimes say namaste because I think that it has such a specific definition that is not, I think, encapsulated by my rough translation. But sometimes I will end my classes by saying, the light in me sees and honors the light in you, and the darkness in me sees and honors the darkness in you, because that is my ratchet American millennial translation of namaste. But I think that when you think about Sanskrit, it's important to remember the legacy of imperialism in British imperialism specifically in India, and the way that Sanskrit is still used as a way of uh, creating classism and discord. So learning about it, I think, can help, but like learning about the history. But also, it's just a very personal decision, and I don't think anybody, just because I don't use it, doesn't mean other people shouldn't.
So this is from Liz talking about distraction. She says, what's your best advice for someone who tends to easily get distracted when trying to center themselves and connect to their mind, to their body?
Mm-hmm.
That distraction piece, it gets us all.
I have no problem with being like, I think if you're easily distracted, that means that your brain works and it's moving around, and that's cool. And like, I think that when that happens, it's the most important thing is to just not beat yourself up about it, because when you start beating yourself up about it, you will lose track, lose focus, not be able to appreciate that losing track, that is the yoga. It's not, the yoga isn't happening like because you have found stillness or balance or something. Like, stillness is actually not stillness. Stillness is the moment in between when you're shaking. So it's that moment of stillness in between the shaking. And it's okay to have chaotic thoughts, and it's okay to not be able to focus, because you're still practicing yoga.
I think absolutely everybody here, including myself, needs to hear that today, that sometimes it's okay to have those chaotic thoughts and to get distracted.
Okay.
It's frustrating as it can be. Like, you're right. Like, I love that whole idea of just accepting it and working through it. All right, this is going to be our last question of the night, although I did want to tell you that you did get a comment from your grandma, your auntie, and family in Green Sea and Tabor City, and they said much love and
What?
support. That was very cute.
What?
Yeah.
Yes. Hello. Oh man, that just.
And then let's finish with this question from Kathy. It's great. Thank you for your transparency and bringing yoga to everyone. I still haven't gone to a studio, but I love your classes on the underbelly. And in your first book, I Need to Chill the F Out tab. Your meditation today was powerful. Will you be bringing more breath work to the underbelly?
Yes, we have a new track. So if you practice on the underbelly, then you'd be familiar with the tracks that we do. We have the air track, which is all about connecting with your breath. We have the earth track that is all about grounding. And then we have the fire track that is all about building heat in your body. And our next track is called the water track. And the water track is all about breath work and meditation. So yes, coming soon to a computer or tablet or Apple TV or whatever you use near you.
Love it. All right. Well, I think that actually is going to do it for us tonight. Our time together is coming to an end. A thank you again to Jessamyn for being here. We're just so grateful that you are still sticking it out and agreeing to these appearances virtually. They mean a lot to us. And then of course, to everybody out there who participated tonight, thank you so much for being here. Again, I just can't say it enough times how grateful we are to have your continued support during this difficult time. And I went ahead and put some links in the chat if you wanted to order more copies of the book, or you can from our website. And other than that, I'm just going to say good night. And again, thanks to everybody.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Stay safe out there, everybody.